What's up, folks? Welcome back to Tactical Tortoise. My name is Trevi, and if there are two things I like, they are cats and vodka. And if there are two things I like, they are cool miniatures and innovative tabletop gaming mechanics. Which is why I'm excited that this video is brought to you by Grave Trigger, a brand new and frankly phenomenally innovative miniature game that features gorgeous miniatures and some of the most unique game systems I've ever seen. In the lore of the Grave Trigger universe, humanity has understandably apocalypsed itself. And seeking to find a way out of their horrible situation, they've created a technology called the Animus Reactor, a biotechnological suit that enables humans to transport themselves between adjacent timelines. Unfortunately for humanity in this universe, interdimensional travel is a little bit more like Event Horizon than it is Rick and Morty. So everything kind of goes awry. These Animus Reactors' advanced intelligences gain sentience and start to enact their own will upon the universes through which they travel. These are the conflicts that you are fighting throughout your games of Grave Trigger, and it does so in a really interesting way. It is a small-scale skirmish game at its heart. The typical game size is between 3 and 6 miniatures a piece, but as you can see, the miniatures are relatively chunky. The scale of the game is a 32mm size, with the Animus Reactors being a good bit larger than a standard human. The models, when compared to like Warhammer 40,000, are going to be quite a bit bigger. The smallest base size in the game, for example, is 40mm, and it plays on a relatively small play surface. The standard game size is played on a 2 foot by 2 foot board. However, that gets transposed across very quickly thanks to the game's unique movement mechanics. Now, the biggest draw of Grave Trigger is going to be its hyper-unique activation system. The whole catchphrase of the game is no dice and no tape measures. As someone with a grand collection of dice and tape measures, that does throw me for a loop. However, the system that they've used to replace those objects is incredible. The game uses an initiative tracker on which initiative is passed back and forth between the players. Players will get tokens that are placed down the line of initiative. This determines both when those characters will act, but also when they move throughout the turn. An interesting thing about Grave Trigger's mechanics is that obviously, there is no movement distance, and while there are range measurement gauges, these are generally only for attacks and abilities, not themselves for movement. In fact, movement is unlimited, only limited by a character's capacity to see where they're trying to go.
Also, it uses volumetric line of sight, not true line of sight, which is great.
Each turn, each character is going to place a little movement token down somewhere on the battlefield that they have line of sight to. The order in which these are placed is based on the initiative tracker. Then, in reverse order, those characters are going to teleport to the position that was already predetermined using that movement token and activate their abilities. So while movement is totally unlimited, where you actually want to go and where it will be useful for your movement units to move around is going to change as your opponent's movement tokens are placed down, and suddenly the final position of their teams is going to become apparent. Now, interestingly as well, all abilities and things like that don't have any randomness assigned to them, largely because a lot of the variance in the game is instead essentially gifted to the opponent rather than in a dice roll. The way this resolves is through the use of these order cards. Before their turn, characters are assigned these cards, either Control, Combat, or Animus. Each of these will have different effects. For example, Combat is typically how you are attacking enemies. Animus allows you to do some weird stuff like move around terrain, and Control orders allow you to actually interact with objectives. And these effects are exclusive. So for example, a character enacting a Control order is not going to be able to interact with any scenario objectives. You have to give up your turn attacking in order to actually win the game. However, you don't know whether your opponent has made the same choice at the start of their turn. So there's a little bit of a cat and mouse in a guessing game, a little bit of poker play. Well, the effects of each of these mechanics is going to resolve exactly the same each time with no variance. Whether or not that's going to be the correct choice for you to have made in that situation is entirely dependent on the combination of choices that both you and your opponent have made over the course of a round. And as a way to remove dice from a game system, that is super duper cool. Now, in addition to that, characters receiving damage is actually going to unlock several special effects for them. Characters have access to a torque limit found in the top right of the card here. This is essentially the health of the human inside their suits. While you are playing the armored Animus reactor, there is a human inside, and too much damage can be detrimental to them. This torque limit is the amount of stress you're allowed to put on that human before it becomes permanently damaging, so that's essentially a limited resource that characters have access to. However, the downside is that using too much of it can potentially inflict permanent damage on the character themselves. However, when they receive damage, they not only gain Animus points that they can spend to use abilities later, which are the little red triangles on the card here, but in each of those little red boxes, they will also receive a damage state. Damage states are essentially a autonomous reaction that the biosuit has in response to incoming damage. This is actually a core part of the game's list building mechanics. And this is absolutely wild. Essentially, when you are constructing a list, you will choose the cards that can apply to each of those damage states. And while damage states might seem like a bad thing, in this case, they're actually beneficial. You're essentially powering up, mutating responsively to your opponent's attacks, and also maybe just getting a little angry in order to win the fight while receiving that damage. So damage is not only a way to take out enemies, but also a resource to use to either unlock these abilities or unlock your other resources to be used throughout the course of the game. While the game's list building is very simplistic, you simply choose a number of characters to play and you choose from a selection of those characters. There is a little bit of variance inside there. Obviously, the damage states can add some of it, but some characters will also have access to unique weapon options. These are also included in the kits, so you can model your characters appropriately with your WYSIWYG weapons, and each weapon can give you potentially different attacks or some different statistics on your stat card as well. So while the list building is very simplistic and it is extremely straightforward, just having the same number of characters as your opponent, there is a lot of customization that can go into it, and you can put a lot of thought into the particular combos between weapons, damage states, and your profile abilities when you are constructing your team. Now, in addition to that, Grave Trigger also boasts a very impressive narrative campaign. The game is truly narrative. It is played throughout a storyline that kind of works out like our role-playing game storyline, where each mission characters will be given NPCs to interact with, particular areas of the battlefield to go and explore, and the way that they do this can actually influence future missions or even how the campaign completes out. So while it can be played as a 1v1 competitive mode or even a multiplayer mode, the rules are in the rulebook for playing with multiple players on a single battlefield, which is neat. You can also come at it with a highly narrative viewpoint. Obviously, this is a horrible universe to inhabit, but whether you want to tear it down or rebuild it anew in your own image is your choice, and you can play through that in that campaign. The art direction is very sort of Giger-esque biomechanical. All the miniatures are absolutely phenomenal. All of that detail is rendered perfectly. It is a PVC material, so it requires super glue to assemble, so be warned of that, but otherwise I didn't see a single mold line, just some injection points. That was literally about it, and then all of the other assembly was a dream, and they look absolutely amazing. A little bit of like Neon Genesis Evangelion or like Guyver energy inside the design of at least the individual characters. Now, all of this that I have on the table right now is going to be available to you as this video goes live over on Grave Trigger's GameFound. You can find links to that in the video description as well as in the pinned comment of the video. This includes this big giant building, which I think is super neat. It even has these little cargo containers that can be slotted in and out, so you can kind of build it as if it is a post-apocalyptic settlement, or you can have little spots for your tiny guys to go stand in if you just want to display them very nicely. This is all MDF stuff, but the game, I believe, will come with punchboard varieties. They can be used, obviously, for this game and other games, and the game system is also compatible with terrain from other games as well. So if you already have stuff from like Warhammer 40,000 or other miniature games, it is compatible with that. Although I will mention that having lots of these little smaller pieces of terrain, these things are rad. They're like mutated living terrain that really fits the kind of post-apocalyptic sort of bio-horror of the setting is pretty useful because characters are going to be able to manipulate this terrain and potentially destroy it, throw it around, or even move it around the table, or in some cases even turn it into these horrible things. This guy looks funky. He looks like a silly little goober with his little eyeball until you notice that there's a man inside there, and that goober was probably a guy one time. Sucks to be him, I guess. I had a chance to meet the lead designer of Grave Trigger as well as the Cardboard Dynamo team over at Adepticon. We had a very long discussion about the sort of underlying mechanics of the game, and I was really impressed by how much that they wanted to bring this really unique activation system to the table, and I think it's definitely worth at least taking a peek at the rules if you are interested in some really, really innovative miniature game design. And hopefully the people who have watched this channel for long enough know that I am a big proponent of innovative miniature game design. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, and so I'm excited that Grave Trigger has sponsored this video because I'm jazzed about this game. This seems like super cool, and hopefully an interesting new direction that we will see in the future of the industry. Inky, what do you think about Grave Trigger? You into it? Or... She's horrified. I'm sorry, I've exposed you to this. So please go check them out on GameFound. The link's down in the video description. Back the project, and let's get this really cool miniature game off the ground. And get some sweet models in here as well. I'm a level with you. This guy might end up being a demon prince at some point in the not too distant future. Depends on how well behaved he is, I guess.